So I've interviewed him a few times. But that sit down is really a lengthy period of time, and it's rare with the Cardinal.
Dave, I know you both talked about an anonymous letter that was posted on a Philadelphia blog back in October that was supposedly written by a priest calling for a vote of no confidence in Cardinal Egan. What was his response to that?
Well, he had already gone on the record with a reaction to it, so when he sat down with us, I felt we were obligated to ask him for our viewers as well. He really, feels the media kind of exaggerated that story. It was an anonymous letter. He's not so convinced it's even written by a priest. He thought maybe a lay person, or if it is a priest, then he thought it might have been someone who had been affected by the sexual abuse scandal, someone who had been investigated. But he acknowledged it, he addressed it. He says he thinks his relationship is great with the priests of the Archdiocese, and the priests, in fact, did meet with him and came out with a letter of support, a priest council.
But in general, he seemed pretty positive about the direction that the church was heading.
The Cardinal, he began talking about the performance in the schools, which he thinks is well. They routinely, their schools send on, and I forget the percentage he cites. I think he says 98%, but a high percentage of his students are on to four-year institutions. So he thinks they're performing well. He talked about the realignment of the Archdiocese with some churches merging. He says it's responding to the changing demographics of the church, but there's been some, at least a couple of parishes who've been angry about it and vowed to fight it.
David, being in the media, you're sort of in a unique position because you're the ones that sort of put the information out there for the people. Based on this and this viewpoint, how do you believe that the church is covered?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say as a reporter, sometimes we're there as the story is bubbling forward, or we're trying to advance the story to the viewer. But very oftentimes, being part of the media, you're not privy to certain things, and you have to try and find them out. So, I think it's always good for the Cardinal to sit down and for more than a quick soundbite at a time, so that people can hear his thoughts. And to the best of what I believe my ability, I try to allow him to expand upon his thoughts and his thinking and get another side of him. I also try to ask him, things about spiritually, his message, and where he thinks things are headed, and how he reacts to things that are happening in society, the war, for example. I think it provides us a good opportunity. Obviously, I think those of us in the media wish we could do it more with him, but the Cardinal says this is his style, and I even asked him about that, and he thinks that he also writes an editorial in Catholic Transcript newspaper as well, so he thinks he gets his message out.
Dave, I know that you were raised Catholic and that you are a Catholic. How does that affect you professionally?
It is true, I was raised Catholic and am a Catholic, but that cannot affect my coverage of the story.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned to Brother Steve, in the past 5 years or so, there have been two sort of major stories regarding the church, in my opinion. The first one being negative is the priest abuse scandal, and the one that's positive is the death of Pope John Paul II and the election of Pope Benedict XVI. What's your opinion of the coverage of these two stories?
There's a responsibility to report the story, and there's no question that the sex abuse scandal was a story, and continued to be a story for quite some time, and the repercussions are still being felt. Those who are protective of the church might feel that there was too much attention put on it, but advocates for those who were sexually abused say there probably wasn't enough attention put onto it. So the bottom line, Peter, is depending upon what your perspective is, somebody's always going to feel that there's too much negative or too much positive. In Journalism 101, they said, look, if a dog bites man, that's not news. If a man bites dog, that's news, because it goes against the grain. It's the unexpected. I think the death of Pope John Paul II, who had been so much a dominant part of the world's landscape for 25 plus years, was a story that transcended religion even. I think there was interest in that beyond the, Catholics in the world. So, and I think even with that, there are always going to be stories that may be deemed not as positive about how John Paul, made his decisions on certain things and certain aspects of the church. But the best we can do as reporters is try to get as much information out there on the story and hope that we come close to, being as objective as we can.
Brother Steve brought up the point that it seems that the news today is filled with an abundance of negative stories and that the positive stories are given much less importance. Do you believe this is true?
Yeah, I can understand why viewers would conclude that. But you know, it's catch-22 because there are some who say if we ran a half hour of just happy, positive stories, people wouldn't watch. I mean, you know, it's the same almost as like a fight at a hockey game. People are drawn to it. When people slow down in a car accident on the side of the road, there's a I don't know if voyeuristic is the right word, but there is general interest in when things go wrong. I mean, if 15 school buses make it to school safely each day in a given district, and we report it every day that the school buses made it safely,
No one would listen.
no one would really listen. But they want to know when something, you know, because then it's just, how does it affect me? If there's a shooting in a particular neighborhood, was this my neighborhood? Is it a shooting spree, or is it a random act? Was it domestic violence? Was it an attack? Was it burglary? Are burglaries up? Are robberies up? So I think, you know, sure, you can always say that the media is drawn to the salacious, and there may be some truth to that, you know. But I think there's also responsibility. I mean, if we don't tell people what's going on in certain neighborhoods, people may be allowed to ignore certain conditions that are affecting our society, you know, just because it's not affecting them immediately or most directly, you know.
Dave, Brother Steve mentioned that cartoon he had seen of the news truck and the news crew sort of celebrating that they could go down and cover the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. From your viewpoint, does it seem that the media sort of picks up stories and then tends to drop them quickly as viewers become less interested?
I think sometimes there's a perception that the media comes in and the attention span is short, and then they move on and the conditions are left. I think with Katrina, however, though, you've seen a commitment from a lot of news organizations, and not to just say, you know, NBC, because that's where I work, but I think, you know, NBC, Brian Williams, they opened a bureau there, staffed it, and they frequently did stories throughout the course of the year because they wanted to absolutely not have happen what you just described. That is to say, we're going to stay on top of the story. And I think other media organizations have done that as well. Is the attention span short? Sure. Is there sometimes where we come in and people think we exploit the story or the neighborhood and then we move on? Sure. But I think there's also a greater degree of follow-up than perhaps the media is given credit for.
And David, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and opinions with me, and I'll be sure to tune in soon to see you on News Channel 4. Thanks so much.
Peter, thanks for stopping by today. Thanks for including me in your project, and I hope I shared some insight with you, and good luck.
Thanks again. So there you have it, the view of the church as well as the view of the media. While I myself won't weigh in, I will say that Brother Stephen and David did raise some very thought-provoking questions, which I hope will lead to some very insightful discussions. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Peter James. Take care.
I felt like there was something missing in my day-to-day life. So I quickly opened the wardrobe, pulled out some jeans and a t-shirt that seemed clean, topped it off with a pair of old shoes that were ripped around the seams. And I thought, these shoes just don't suit me. Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything's right. I said, hey, I put some new shoes on and everybody's smiling. It's so inviting. No short on money but long on time. Slowly strolling in the sweet sunshine, and I'm running late and I don't need an excuse, 'cause I'm wearing my brand new shoes. I said, hey, I put some new shoes on and everybody's smiling. It's so inviting. Oh, short on money but long on time. Slowly strolling in the sweet sunshine, and I'm running late and I don't need an excuse, 'cause I'm wearing my brand new shoes.